senior Hamas official says that the terrorist group's initial reaction to the American drafted deal is negative, but no official decision has been announced yet. US senators are demanding the arrest of the prosecutor in The Hague, and thanks to the investigation of the Nukhba terrorists of Hamas, we see continued results from the IDF operations in Gaza. Let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on the 209th day of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, and all their proxies. The Israeli War Cabinet is expected to meet today in preparation for Hamas's answer to the proposed deal for the release of the remaining hostages and a possible ceasefire. Already yesterday, a senior member of Hamas declared, "We made it clear that the position is negative regarding the draft of the current negotiations." According to the foreign sources, these are the details of the proposed deal. The first step would be the release of 33 abductees, hostages, including the sick and elderly. This would be accompanied by a temporary ceasefire with the possibility of an extension. Then 20 security prisoners being held in Israeli jails will be released in exchange for each hostage, and after that 40 security prisoners will be released in exchange for every female soldier. But Hamas is also making demands that Israel simply cannot accept. They include the complete and permanent ceasefire, full withdrawal of all IDF troops from the Gaza Strip, and an unconditional return of Gazan residents to the northern part of the Gaza Strip, including Hamas terrorists who operated there before October 7th. In other words, Hamas is demanding that Israel unilaterally agree to lose the war and give up everything that it has accomplished over the last 7 months of fighting. With all this in mind, we can estimate that in the coming days or hours, a decision will be made that will bring the campaign in the Gaza Strip to an end, one way or another. Either there will be a hostage deal with Hamas, or the IDF will push into Rafah and eliminate the last remaining Hamas military formations. Until a final answer is given regarding the possible deal for the release of our remaining hostages, the IDF says that a plan for entry into Rafah is ready to be implemented whenever the political echelon gives the word. However, strong opposition to this plan has come from many of Israel's allies, especially the Americans, who have seen the Israeli plan and have not given their approval. Voices of opposition have also come from the United Nations and several European governments, while Egypt has threatened that it could endanger the peace treaty between the two countries. Hamas, of course, is promising a bloodbath for the IDF troops, and above all, there is the issue of more than 1 million Palestinians who are located in this small area of 64 kilometers in and around Rafah. As we've told you before, Rafah is in the center of the Philadelphia corridor, which stretches from the Mediterranean Sea eastward along the 15 kilometers of the border between Israel and Egypt. This border is a source of life for the terrorist organizations in the Gaza Strip. They not only smuggle weapons through it, but also control the transfer of goods, through which military activity is financed and control over the population is maintained. Israel believes that controlling this border and taking the necessary steps to put an end to the smuggling will enable the encirclement of the Strip and cut off Hamas from the Sinai Peninsula. However, first things first, and the first thing that needs to happen in any event is the evacuation of as many Palestinian civilians from Rafah as possible. Until October 7th, about 250,000 people lived in Rafah. When the IDF moved into the north of the Strip, it warned the civilian population to move south, and that began to swell the population of Rafah till it reached approximately 1.3 million people, according to the United Nations. The situation for these internally displaced people in Rafah is very difficult, with most living in tents set up in parks and other open spaces, with limited access to water and sanitation. The humanitarian aspects of the situation is critical to everything related to the possible military operation. Fighting the Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorists in the alleys and tunnels of Rafah with hundreds of thousands of civilians in close proximity to the fighting would inevitably result in large numbers of civilians being killed in the crossfire. This is the central concern driving so much international opposition to the operation. Even according to Israel's optimistic estimates, the evacuation of most of these civilians to safe zones between the El Mawasi area and Khan Yunis will take about 2 to 3 weeks. The IDF spokesman in Arabic published a message to the residents of Rafah in which he said, in addition to fighting Hamas and continuing to dismantle it, we continue to make acute humanitarian efforts to improve the humanitarian situation within the Gaza Strip because our war is against Hamas, not against the residents of Gaza. With all of this in mind, here are the possible scenarios for what will happen next. First, in the coming hours or days, the mediators may lead Israel and Hamas to agree on a deal under which all Israeli hostages will be released in exchange for the release of a large number of Palestinian prisoners, a long ceasefire, and the return of the displaced to the north of the Gaza Strip. Also, there would be a partial withdrawal of military forces from the Gaza Strip on one scale or another. Another possibility is that in accordance with the American diplomatic efforts of the last months, the deal may include a basis for normalization agreements with Saudi Arabia and the strengthening of the regional alliance against Iran and its proxies. This would probably involve returning the administration of the Palestinian Authority into the Gaza Strip as an alternative to Hamas. Another possibility is that Hamas will refuse the terms of the deal. Such a situation could put Israel between a rock and a hard place. It will be left without the hostages, but also without international support to move into Rafah. However, with or without support, the IDF will have to enter the city in order to dismantle the local Hamas brigade that has not yet been dealt with and damage the arms smuggling routes from Sinai in Egypt. Hamas has also been busy preparing for what might come next, and this includes the release of videos in the past weeks showing hostages begging the Israeli government to accept Hamas's terms for ending the war. This is a form of psychological warfare, but it might also be an indication of the desperation Hamas is feeling as it knows its options are running out. We can also see this in some of the rhetoric they've been coming out with in recent days. This includes statements in Hebrew, such as Israel will drown in the sands of Rafah and the flames of Arabia. Who is Hamas trying to fool with such absurd expressions? Are they trying to scare Israel, or are they trying to convince themselves that they are not about to be utterly destroyed? In any case, another question that comes up is about why Egypt doesn't want action in Rafah. Since the beginning of the war, Egypt has expressed concerns about the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, which could lead to an influx of refugees entering its territory. This concern increases when it comes to Rafah, which is on its border. Since February, President El-Sisi has been warning Israel against action in the city. As you may recall, after Blinken's visit to Israel last night, Netanyahu repeated that the operation in Rafah would be carried out despite the statements of the United States and the postponement of the entry date twice. The UN issued a warning that this will lead to a tragedy, as entering Rafah could violate international law and humanitarian law with the weapons provided by the United States and lead to the implementation and imposition of the arrest warrants on the Prime Minister and other senior members of the Israeli leadership. Therefore, this is the stage where we need you to spread the truth with us. Subscribe to this YouTube channel and share our videos with as many people as you can, so that people will know what is happening in Israel, in this region, and know what to pray for. This is a battle for the truth, and we need to be united in order to win. The issue of international courts and their possible actions against Israeli officials is a very serious one. The threat by the International Criminal Court in The Hague to issue warrants for the arrest of Israeli officials is very corrupt and wrong, and I'll explain why. The process of issuing such warrants is supposed to be public and open, but it has been carried out mostly in forms that were closed to the public. Israeli officials won't even find out if these warrants have actually been issued until they set foot on European soil and are either arrested or not. The pretext for this action by the ICC is the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip and statements made by various governments regarding Israel's violation of international law while referring to the situation of the civilian population in Gaza and violations of the 4th Geneva Convention. However, an American official said, "We do not recognize the authority of the court, and this fact has not changed. We will keep a close watch on this situation and keep you updated moving forward." Thank you for your support. Please share our videos, and if you want us to create more content from Israel, from the Middle East, please consider making a financial donation by clicking the donate button on this video on YouTube or going to our website at www.tbn.org/Israel. I want to conclude by telling you about a very interesting report that caught my eye as I was reading an IDF publication. The report was about the Shin Bet's interrogation of Nukhba Force terrorists from Hamas who had been captured in Gaza. These interrogations provided the Shin Bet with a great deal of tactical intelligence, which was immediately passed on to operational units to plan further moves. There was so much information that it got turned into a daily newspaper called Streetwise that was distributed to the troops and included detailed maps of tunnels, weapons storage facilities, an in-depth enemy awareness book, and other aids. Other intelligence gathering efforts included electronic monitoring of Hamas communications, which led to rapid solutions for protecting tanks and APCs that extended the protection of the combat teams just because they knew where the terrorists were trained to shoot. The lives of many soldiers have been saved as thousands of anti-tank weapons have been fired at the IDF but were not effective due to the protective measures. Other solutions were developed to address the threat to IDF troops from tunnels and underground bunkers. The Israeli Mossad analyzed the data provided by IDF ground units and quickly devised methods for improving the approach to these tunnels, saving time and lives. These methods included the extensive use of robotics, which were powered by rapid technological improvements developed on an almost daily basis. As I've said before, all of what the IDF has learned and all the new technology and methods we've developed in this conflict will be shared with our friends, primarily the United States. On that note, I would like to ask you to continue spread the truth, share and follow us, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and pray for the peace of Israel, for the IDF soldiers, for the civilians on both sides in this entire region, in the Gaza Strip, in Israel, and in the Middle East. All of those that are not terrorists and do not want war and bloodshed. Please join us in prayer for the peace of Jerusalem, and together we will win this war.